to my third faction breakdown for Gridwars 2.0. This is going to be the Yakuza, and we're going to go through the cards one by one, but we'll start off with a little bit of a faction breakdown on their lore and their key or main faction ability along with their themes. So the roots of the Yakuza can be traced back to medieval Earth. It has gone a long way from a bloodthirsty gang that lurks in the shadows to a well-respected clan doing official business with the key players on the scene. The Yakuza persevered because of its strict code of honor that differentiates it from the opportunistic corporations. Looking at the Sakura Corporation here. They are currently one of the only agencies that actually help out the regular citizens without asking for anything in return. Seemingly. The Yakuza has preserved the lost art of using cold steel in battle. It is some of the most effective melee weapon attacks available on the grid. This combined with evasion and a lot of mobility abilities bring out many ways to assassinate the most dangerous enemy units. The strict Yakuza code allows the units to change the flow of energy in the most crucial situations. So I think the Yakuza breaks down as a pretty interesting faction in Grid Wars. First off, I really like that despite that they come across a bit as another gang and a bit of a rich and elite, not too far off of what you see in the Sakura Corporation, they do sort of help out the little guys in Titan City, you know, supporting the citizens, as they say, without asking anything in return. And this is a common tactic that you see in mafias and mobs and even the real life Yakuza, where they do sort of have the support of the public that really helps them out when they are, you know, against the local government or the city government or the police force. They're probably not actually doing it out of the kindness of their own hearts, but instead to have the citizens maybe not report back to the authorities on their doings. But regardless, I like to try and treat them a little bit more as having a conscience in doing, doing battle and shady activities against the other factions, but not necessarily trying to abuse the citizens of the grid. Their main faction ability is called the Legacy Vault. So the Yakuza faction will generate one less energy at the beginning of each round, but at the end of each round, they can remove up to one unspent energy from each Yakuza unit. Place the energy removed this way in the Legacy Vault beside the grid. There can be a maximum of 3 energy tokens in the Legacy Vault, and the energy from the vault can be spent by any Yakuza units as their own at any time. So this is a vast improvement over the ability they had in Grid Wars 1.0. I think their ability there allowed them, when any Yakuza unit would be killed on the grid, they could transfer all their energy to another Yakuza unit, which is kind of hard to really make benefit of, and it was very situational. I mean, it could be good if you lost a unit that had a lot of energy on it, but it's nowhere near as powerful as this ability, and I think that's a good thing, because I was not really that excited to play the Yakuza in Grid Wars 1.0 because I felt like their faction ability was a step down from just about every other faction, or at least the factions that I played. But I'm very excited to try them out in Grid Wars 2.0. I haven't yet, but I've got most of the faction printed, and actually all of the faction printed, but most of it painted and based, and I'm looking forward to trying them out and seeing how strong this new ability is. It's worth noting that it says 3 energy tokens is the maximum in the vault, but there are a few ways to increase that, or at least one way. I know there's one unit that'll boost that, so boosts up to 4, and a lot of ways to spend the energy from the vault or get advantages if the vault is full or the vault is empty, or if you add to the vault or take from the vault. There's a lot of synergies there. So let's look at the cards now. Okay, we'll start off the Yakuza review with their sumo character. This character was released on Patreon in one of their themed months that was set around a tournament fighter, where you had all these different one-on-one melee fighters that could sort of go into an arena or a pit and have a fight. He's clearly inspired by E Honda of the Street Fighter fighting game, not just in his sumo appearance, but in some of his abilities as well, which we'll talk about. But right off the bat, you can look at his Engineering, hacking, and hacking defense skills are zeros across the board. He's got a 2 under his melee mastery, nothing for his range mastery, a slow 3 for his movement, which is going to limit him a little bit, but he has a little bit of ways to get around that as well. No armor, but a whopping 9 health, which is I think the maximum you'll find in the game. So not only is that great for his resiliency, but it makes him able to throw every other character in the game, which we'll see is important to him because his ultimate doyo ability is when Ambrosius begins his turn, he gains a throw action. So if you're starting your turn in melee, you'll be able to throw the opponent and then potentially charge in and continue to attack him or attack someone else. But free actions are always good, and free offensive actions like a throw is excellent, especially where he's got the ability to throw everyone in the game. So then he also has this 3-palm strike, which is again another callback to the Street Fighter character who, when you rapidly tapped the punch button, would go into a bit of a flurry of slaps. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see that. Yeah, he can attack 3 times. They're kind of weak, but they add up over time. He's got the sumo squeeze, which is a little bit stronger. You don't get to do it 3 times. Attacks with 4 dice, but it also penetrates 4 armor. So that's great for cracking armor of a tough opponent. The Nokata, which is a sumo term, I believe, for basically continue to fight or your fight is ongoing. But from there, he can, it's a quick action, so he can do it effortlessly without spending an action. He can move 2, but it can only be used to enter combat. And then he can add 1 energy to the Legacy Vault. So that's a pretty great one because you already want to add as much energy to the vault as you can because you can spend that with any of the characters. And moving 2 sort of helps when you already have a bit of a slow move. You can sort of bounce around from opponent to opponent if possible. And then finally he has the Rikishi Supreme. Double the number of dice that the enemies rolled when they are thrown. So just a chance to increase their damage. With the throws, something he's strong in. He sort of revolves around throwing. Then we have the Cyber Samurai, who feels very in theme for the Yakuza in a cyberpunk game. So he starts with, he's got a hacking ability of 1 and an IDS defense of 2. A 3 for melee mastery, nothing for his range mastery, a standard movement of 4, and 5 health with 2 shields, which is a little above average. He's got this backstab passive ability that basically when he finishes a blink or move adjacent to the back half of an enemy, he gets a free melee attack. So, a sneaky samurai fighter that can, again, getting those bonus attacks is always good. So try and sneak into the back arc. He's got a nano katana, so it has critical strike, which means all your naturally rolled skulls will be unblockable hits, and he attacks with an additional dice for each energy token in the Legacy Vault. So as that vault builds up, you may want to try and use Cyber Samurai before you spend much of it in that round. Then he has his Electro Hat, which is a template beam weapon, so in a straight line of 6, you'll hit everyone in the way. I sort of picture, if you remember the old Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat 2 and onward, there was Kung Lao, who could throw his hat. I'm getting sort of that vibe from this guy. Maybe if you're even older, you can harken it back to Michael Jackson Moonwalker on Sega Genesis, but that's for the older people. Finally, he's got this Phase Link, which is a blink of 4. So the blink is a movement that doesn't trigger Overwatch, and you can do in combat to escape combat. Basically, you won't be seen. You're reappearing in the new space 4 hexes away. So it's great that he has that, and then after he destroys an enemy, he may blink 4 as well. So there's multiple options for him to be blinking around the board. All right, next up we have Dai, the Silent One. And Dai is probably one of my favorite models in the Yakuza faction. I just love that he's got this briefcase and the submachine gun in the other hand, complete with the cyber visor, and then his sewn or stapled up mouth. I think he's got a really cool looking character. He also has a engineering stat of 1, a hacking stat of 3, so he's pretty good on the hack, along with a IDS or hacking defense of 2. No melee mastery, but a ranged mastery of 1, a standard move of 4, no armor, and 5 hit points. He's got this delivery ability here, his passive ability. At the end of Dai's turn, if he is not in combat, add 1 to the Legacy Vault. So already, more ways to be adding energy to that vault. His Uzi's SMG, Bull Ride, has a range of 7 and ignores cover with 4 attack dice. He has this quite a unique ability here to apply silence to both yourself and a target enemy in range 16. And what silence does, it means you can no longer hack until the next round, and all your hacks have no abilities. In addition to that, I believe you have to spend 1 energy for any of your abilities to be used. An additional energy. So if your ability already costs 1, it costs 2. So that's a really situational ability. I think you'll want to use it when you are targeting your opponent's best hacker or strong hacker that you fear hacks that may be coming out of them in the next round, because you're also going to be eliminating Dai's ability to use hacks in the next round. And as you see here, his next 2 abilities are both hacks and pretty good ones too. So he has the vulnerability scan, which is a direct hack, and all attacks against the target enemy in range 8 have critical strike until the end of the round. So you can use that preferably when you still have a few more models left to activate, so they can all benefit from this hack. And then he has the data leak, so up to 2 target enemies in range 8 receive a number of hits equal to their IDS statistic. So this is another good one for targeting enemy hackers, as their IDS statistic is usually higher, so some have 3s and 4s there, and that's going to be a lot of hits coming in on them. So next up we have Jinji Kawasaki. So clearly he's on a motorcycle here. He's got a sword in hand. He's a pretty cool looking Yakuza model, sort of what you expect from the Street Samurai or the cyberpunk world of a Yakuza style gang to have. So he's got a 2 for engineering, no hacking, but a 1 for hacking defense, a 2 melee mastery, a 0 for his range mastery, a great 7 move, which makes sense since he's on the bike, 1 armor, and 6 health. He's got this swing by / drive by ability that once per turn, when he uses a move action, he can gain an attack action with the full speed / at any time during the movement. So even as you pass by a guy, if you're no longer engaged with them at the end of the movement, you still can get attack at them. So full speed / is the attack that he would use, both during the swing by and during his regular attacks. So it's a critical strike with 3 dice and 1 armor penetration. He has this last stunt ability, which will take an ability, and you can only use it once per round and once per game actually, because it will destroy the bike. So you gain a move action, then deal 2 damage to all units in a 2 hex radius and destroys units. Basically, he calls it the last stunt, so he's driving in there quite recklessly, sacrificing himself for the good of the Yakuza. He's got a pretty cool engineering ability here where he can apply blind to all adjacent units and then gain a move action. So when they're blind, he'll be able to escape the lockdown of melee and leave them vulnerable for your other units to take out. That will cost you his 1 material though. And finally, he has the speed surge, which is a great ability potentially to start the round or even later on as you're trying to grab some objectives. But after Genji uses a move action twice in a single turn, he gains cover and +2 armor until the end of the round. So you can sort of bolt yourself out there to the front lines a bit on that first turn, moving a total of 14 hexes, and still get cover and armor until the end of the round. So even though you're throwing yourself up quite forward, you're not exposing yourself to range attacks to the same degree as you would under normal movement. So next up we have Jinji Kawasaki again, this time on foot. There's no real connection between the model on foot and the model on bike, and I wish there was. I believe in, I know in Gridwars 1.0, the on-foot version could spend a engineering action to bring his bike into the grid and basically become the version on bike. And I'd like to see something in that continue into Gridwars 2.0, but right now there isn't, so it just feels like there's no real reason for these to be the same character. This is a guy holding a sword with a motorcycle helmet, and he doesn't need to have the same name as the other Jinji Kawasaki, as it limits you bringing them both into the same list. And whereas there's no real benefit to them both sharing characteristic. It's not like this guy's overpowered if you bring the bike version. It's just a little bit disappointing that there's not a way to link them. I would have liked to seen perhaps in the bike version when he uses his last stunt, if he can exist on foot with maybe a die roll, and then have like 1 or 2 health left and continue the battle like that. But just a very minor gripe, as it doesn't really affect anything. It's just there's no connection to them, so I don't see the real benefit of them sharing the same name. Anyway, Jinji Kawasaki on foot has a 3 in engineering, up from his 2 on the bike version. Still no hacking and an IDS of 1. He's got 2 melee mastery, 0 under range mastery, a movement of 4, no armor, and 5 health. He has a samurai stance that allows him to spend a token from the legacy vault to change all armor results to his saves in a defense roll, which can be very useful. You sometimes get those attacks that you just can't do anything about, and you have, he has 0 armor. So usually he can't convert any over, so maybe he gets a good roll full of armor rolls, and he can use 1 energy to turn them all to blocks. He's got his steady slash here, which still has critical strike, but has an additional dice. He's got this dedication ability, which allows him to gain a charge action, and if it's successful, you can deal 1 damage to yourself to gain 2 energy before performing the free attack. So this is again going to be very situational if you want to take a damage, which is very risky. Each damage brings you 1 closer to death, and but the 2 energy may be helpful both in the attack you're about to make, and maybe throughout the rest of the round you will find yourself needing that energy on your dice rolls. He's also got this quick ability, engineering ability of ballistic nylon. So until the end of the round, enemies have to re-roll all dice chosen by you in range attacks against you. So you can just try to, eliminate energy or skull rolls. And finally, he's got this accelerator module. Activate an adjacent sentry gun, and it can move 6 in its move action. So just a nice little engineering ability to use the neutral units. Next up, we have Heishiro. He has no stats under engineering, hacking, or IDS, but he does have a 2 for melee mastery, 0 for ranged, 4 for his movement, no armor, and 5 hit points. His finesse passive ability is after each attack action, Heishiro may blink to any hex adjacent to the target. So this can be useful to get into the back arc of your opponent, or even just get out of their lockdown so you can leave combat if you desire. But really it's going to be all about getting to that back arc, because with the old Earth Sword, if you are attacking from behind, attack with critical strike and 1 additional die, and then on damage you will add 1 energy to the legacy vault. So it's always good to be adding that damage to the vault, but additionally getting that critical strike will be a little bit easier due to that blink ability he has. His Inspired Heritage ability allows him to remove an energy from the vault to gain an action. So since that's a quick action, it's giving you basically 3 actions per turn instead of the average 2. So that makes him seem really good. Of course, the vault has to have an energy in there, but that seems to be quite a feasible task with the Yakuza, with so many different ways to add to the legacy vault. He has this taunt action, which can be used to move an enemy in range 6 to take the closest path to an unoccupied hex adjacent to you. So basically you taunt them into engaging you so you can start attacking them. And finally, he has this passive advantage for when an enemy spends energy token to change energy results to saves when defending from Heishiro's attack, he gains 1 energy. It's a bit of a mouthful, but basically when you are on the attack, if your opponent spends an energy to change his results, you will be gaining an energy during that. Overall, I think Heishiro is a pretty interesting character. He's got a good sculpt and a lot of good abilities. I do think he may be undercosted. 21 cost, points, coins, whatever. Seems really low for what you get with him. Number one, it's going to be pretty easy for you to have 3 actions a turn. He's got a relatively good attack that's easy for him to boost with critical strike and a die. And if you think of the other units that are about 20 points in the game, he's better than most of them. I'm thinking like, if you think of the TCPD for 18 points, you get those the regular officers, and they just, you know, they're fine. They need the three of them to kind of get a really good ability, and they feel cheap at 18 points. But for 3 points more, the Yakuza get this guy, and he's kind of an all-star at that price point. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go up in the future, although I don't really know how Cyberforge wants to get into the errata of the units and whatnot. It's easy for them to do since it's digitally released and you can update these PDFs, but they are kind of acknowledging that this is not the most competitive based game. It's sort of more narrative. You get all these like superstars and heroes on the streets duking it out, and 1 or 2 points here and there may not be the most balanced thing, and that's not what they're going for. The super competitive person can probably really study these cards and abilities and figure out what the best point value, the best points to spend for your list would be, and then sort of min-max that out. And that's not what this game is all about. But I still feel this guy, if you put him up to 25 or 26 points, he might seem a little more balanced. But that's without playing them, so I mean, it could be just completely wrong in this. I just looking at these reviews and looking at the point cost of some of these models, he feels undercosted, or it just feels really good for the cost that he has. Anyways, moving on. Next up we have Ikkyo Serpentblade, who is the cyber ninja of the Yakuza. She has no engineering, but 2 hacking and 2 hacking defense. She has the melee mastery of 2, range mastery of 1, a 4 move, 2 armor, and 5 hit points. Her electric dream ability is when Ikkyo would be destroyed for the first time in a game, instead she survives with 1 HP remaining and is immune to damage until the end of the round. So that can be really good in the late game because you can be a little more aggressive with her, knowing that in the last round or two, if she is destroyed, she'll be able to come back and not be damaged again to the end of the round. So it gives you that one more chance to know that she'll be there, and perhaps to finish some last objective knowing that she can't die. Her abilities are, her attacks are the Ultra Melt Sword, so a fusion weapon, so it'll be a little stronger against the higher armored enemies, so you get 1 additional dice for each armor your opponent has, while at the same time removing their armor statistic. So that 2 dice feels kind of low, but with some guys with 3 and 4 armor out there, she could really be overpowered against those ones and quite strong. She has the shurikens, so the throwing stars, a range 5 with critical strike, and 3 attack dice there. She has the flash dance ability to apply blind to all adjacent units, which means that afterwards she'll be able to leave combat if she desires. She'll no longer be locked into it. And finally, she has this pretty cool ability that I like. It does cost an energy and an action, but you can dash 5, and dash allows you to move through opposing units. So if you pay for this ability with an energy from the Legacy Vault, gain a melee attack action against each enemy that you move through. So if you're, even dashing 5, it's unlikely you're going to get more than 2, but it still could be a fun ability to play around with, especially if you can. Actually, I'm going to have to look close to the rule. Dash 5, I think it's just a movement of 5. I was acting like it was a movement in a straight line, and I'm not convinced that it is. But you may be able to bounce around and maybe get 2 or 3 hits in against the enemy. Jinpachi. So this is a big brute on the Yakuza. He's got a bit of a ogre or oni look to him. He's got no skills under engineering and hacking, but he has 1 hacking defense, 1 melee mastery, nothing for range, a standard movement of 4, 2 armor, and 7 health. So a pretty good thrower. He also has this spinal armor ability, so enemies do not gain the attack from behind bonus against Jinpachi. So he's got some armor back there, so you don't have to worry about exposing his rear arc. His Anvil Crush is his melee attack of 3 dice, 2 armor penetration, and 2 damage per hit. So that's always nice to see. It's those 2 damage, especially where he has 3 dice. That could be a really powerful one. He's got his homemade grenade. You see it on his model on his hip. And it's a range weapon, range 4 AoE. So it's a template weapon. You can drop it on a hex and hit all the hexes around it. But before the attack, instead of performing any attack rolls, you can deal 1 damage to all units in the AoE. So it's sort of a toss-up if you want to go for more damage or just would rather take the safe damage of doing one hit to every opponent that's going to be hit by it. So sometimes it might be worth it to take the guaranteed damage. He's got reinforced arms, so he gains the throw action and doubles the throw distance. So again, getting your opponents further out of position or slamming them into walls that are further away, it's all benefits to you. And finally, his Ancestry, a passive ability that for the purposes of throwing, Jinpachi's health statistic is increased by 1 for each energy in the vault. So when the vault is maxed out at 12, he's got basically a body statistic, when it's maxed out at 5, his throwing goes up to 12. So that'll allow him to throw everyone in the game, even some of the bigger units that we've talked about that have health hit points of 9, he'll be able to toss them even though he is technically lower than them. Overall, I think Jinpachi is a very strong looking unit. Every faction has a couple of these bigger, more expensive guys that hit a little harder, take a bit more hits, and I think he definitely has a place in a regular Yakuza list. Next up, we have Katsune, a bit of the cat-like sniper for the Yakuza. She has some great stats here, the 3 engineering, the 2 hacking, and the 1 hacking defense. Nothing for melee, but a great 3 for range mastery, making sense that she is the sniper. A 4 for move, a 1 armor, and the 4 health, the 4 health is about average, but in Yakuza it's sort of been on the lower end. She has this passive ability that when she's attacking enemies with a 6 or more higher health statistic, she gets 2 additional dice in the attack. So her normal range attack has 3, she'll have 5. She also has this elbow bash here for her melee attacks, where she has 3 dice as well. Then the range 13 sniper attack. And she can boost that sniper attack with her engineering ability. So her ranged attacks gain armor penetration until the end of the round. So you can spend as many as you want, so potentially all 3 of these in one attack, to just negate the armor of a particularly strong or tough enemy. She can also spend 1 engineering to gain 2 move actions. So that can give her a good movement up the field. She's got a movement of 4, so moving 8 hexes up the field. In addition to her range 13 attack, she may be able to attack someone on the first round of the game. And then Kimiko is one of the more unique characters on the Yakuza, and I quite liked her. She's got some similar abilities to Gridwars 1.0. And yeah, I think they nailed it the first time around, so it's nice to see that they've still gone with her theme. And that theme is somewhat of like the disguise. We'll get into her ability, but it's basically she hides amongst the crowd and is sort of unassuming, and no one really thinks she's the enemy, perhaps until it's too late. But she has a bit of hacking skills, but nothing else there. 1 for each mastery, 4 for movement, no armor, and 4 hit points. So her disguise is that while there are other alive allies and Kimiko was not yet activated this round, she cannot be targeted by enemies. She's also not locking them down in combat, so they can perform actions as if they were not in combat with her, but it keeps her alive longer. If you move her late in the round, she shouldn't be getting hit. She has her Brella Blade, which on damage give 1 shield for each energy token in the Legacy Vault. So again, if you get that hit while the vault is close to full, you can get 5 shields potentially. Even 2 or 3 is great, but the potential to get 5 shields is a lot for your opponent to have to work through before they can actually put any damage to your body statistic. She has a concealed pistol, range 6, standard stats, but she gets to use it twice, which is a nice bonus, making her feel pretty good. She can create a distraction, which will apply stun to a target unit in range 5. You can move 2 if all units in combat with you are stunned. So if you do stun the one who's actually in combat with you, you can use that to leave combat. And finally, she has the blow cover, which is she can choose any ally. It gains an attack, a non-template range attack, against an enemy in 4 hex radius from you. So basically, while you've already blown your cover, you just use it to call out an enemy for your ally to attack. Which, if you pair her with the right ally, potentially the sniper Katsune we just saw, it's a good opportunity to get another free range attack in with someone who's even stronger than Kimiko. Not that she's too weak. I mean, statistically there she's weak and stuff, but this double attack's really good, and her ability to gain shields and basically avoid attacks for much of the round can't be understated. There may come times when it's going to be more beneficial to move her earlier in the round, but for me, I couldn't see myself doing that too often. Trying to keep her for my last or second last character of the round. Russell Coretta Jr. So he's got a 1-in-1 for hacking and engineering, nothing for the defense. 2 for his melee, 1 for his range mastery, a 4 movement, and 5 health. So he is got the 4 honor passive ability. So after an enemy uses a melee attack against Russell, he gains a melee attack action against that enemy. So you hit him, he hits back, and that's not a once per round. That's the whole round every time he's attacked in melee. So obviously, your opponent's going to want to try and use. I mean, if you're facing this guy, you're going to want to try and use range attacks. But when you are playing him, you want to close that distance as quick as possible and be in base-to-base contact. His short blade does have critical strike, so all natural skulls will be unblockable hits. He's got a penetration of 1 with 3 dice. He also has a phantom slash, so it's a template weapon, basically a range 4 beam, so he can use that slash to hit guys up to 4 spaces away from him, and in that case it will have 2 armor penetration, but the rest of the stats are the same. He's got the Devil's Luck, so he can re-roll all blank results and all 1 results in his rolls. That includes his hacking and charging for the 1s, and then all his blanks in both defense and attacks. So pretty great statistic there as well. And finally, he's the heir of the Yakuza. So once per round, when you spend an energy from the vault, Russell may gain 1 energy. So again, using him later in the round could be a benefit, so he can actually stack up a bit of energy. And every time I sort of do these faction reviews, I like to sort of point out one guy that feels like he would be the leader of the faction, and no one in the Yakuza really jumps out, but with that heir of the Yakuza, I like to picture this guy is probably the closest thing we have to a leader in the models available. There doesn't seem to be an actual boss of the Yakuza, but as this guy has that statement of heir, I'd like to think he's next in line. So maybe the boss isn't someone who ever goes to the grid, but this is the closest thing we have to the leadership representative. Then we have Takahashi, which is a bit of a weird model. You get this little old man on a little 4-legged walker with turrets on the side. I kind of like the appeal. He's got the little sensors all over him, which makes sense as we'll see a little down the road. He is quite the hacker. Well, right away we'll jump in. He's got a 4 for engineering and a 4 for hacking and a 1 for hacking defense. No mastery for melee, but a 1 under range mastery, a movement of 4, an armor of 1, and a 5 hit points. So he's got a sentry formation. Takahashi and all allies in a 3-hex radius always have Overwatch. So that is great. You can really cover a whole area that your opponent will not want to have to cross if you have 3 characters with Overwatch in that direction. Or you can be looking in multiple directions and really cover all angles of the board, potentially. So he also has his auto turret, which is a range 9, and allows him to reroll 1 dice. Already with 4 dice, that's pretty good. Then we get into his hacks, which have hacking stats of 7, which means he only needs to roll 3 to do what is considered a relatively difficult hack. So Speed Glitch is great because he can move 4 and then perform an additional hack in this hacking action. So he can then do the Freeze Glitch or one of the net hacks or direct hacks that you'd find in the manual. The Freeze Glitch may be even better because you can move 4 and then your turn ends. But until the end of the round, you gain range attacks from Overwatch against all visible enemies. So not just, usually Overwatch is a straight line, like a beam attack, from the front dot of your hex where you're actually facing. And anyone who walks in that straight line will get hit or get attacked. This allows Takahashi to cover everything in his front arc at all, so it's a lot more powerful. So I could see myself using 1 attack if possible, moving 4 and using this freeze glitch as much as I could. Just because you'll have that coverage of Overwatch. And finally, decommissioning. When he's destroyed, you'll place a sentry gun on his hex, facing any direction, and put a backdoor token on it. So that backdoor token will make it a little bit easier to hack and use from your end, and a little bit more difficult for your opponent. But also just placing it will have an Overwatch neutral unit covering something you want covered. So covering more towards the area that's beneficial for your opponent. Next up, we have Tsukino Takahashi, and can't remember. I remember when she was released on Patreon, she had a bit of a write-up on her. I believe she's the granddaughter of Takahashi that we just reviewed. If not granddaughter, maybe a great niece or something like that. Regardless, she's definitely a family member, and also is a bit of a pop star, I believe. So she is somewhat famous and still in association with the Yakuza and still coming to battle on the grid. But by day, or I guess by night, the opposite of the grid time, she's out there singing as somewhat a famous pop star. So it's kind of a fun character. It's nice to have a little bit of lore about like that. So she's got nothing for engineering, but a 3 in hacking and a 1 hacking defense. No mastery for melee, but 3 for range, which is pretty great. 4 movement, no armor, and 4 hit points. So idol, like she is the idol, the pop star. Each attack against Tsukino has a -2 dice unless the attacker transfers 1 energy token to the legacy vault, or to Tsukino herself if the vault is full. So basically they're going to have a 2 dice disadvantage unless they transfer energy over to your side. So that's already great. So she has the Sparkle Ray, which is a template attack. It's her range 9 beam weapon, so it'll attack everyone in a straight line. It's also a plasma weapon, so she can opt to boost it, but for an extra additional dice with the risk of taking hits from blanks that she rolls. She also has the Glitter Blast, which is a range 9 attack, not a beam weapon this time, but changes all blank to energy results. So as long as she has an energy on her, that'll be a good thing. She has this free ability, Starstruck, which can apply stun to an enemy in range 6. It's a quick ability, not free. You do have to pay an energy for that. But stunning an enemy at the right time could be very advantageous. Finally, she has a fan base. So when Tsukino begins her turn with at least 1 ally in a range 3 hex radius, she gains an energy. So it should be pretty easy to have an energy on her for her other abilities. The Last Samurai is another big bruiser for this team. It's sort of an iconic Yakuza-looking character. He has no stats for engineering or hacking, but he has the 3 hacking defense. He's got a 3 melee mastery, nothing for ranged. A bit slower with a movement of 3. He's got the 4 armor, which is great. In addition to that, he's got his 5 hit points. So he's got some staying power for sure. He's the Vault Guardian, so the maximum number of tokens in the Legacy Vault is increased by 1, so it's normally 5, so he can allow you up to 6 energy tokens in the vault. He's got the Emperor Katana attack. If this attack destroys an enemy, add 1 energy to the Legacy Vault. So simple enough there, just another energy added to the vault. It's got a great attack of 5 dice with 2 armor penetration. But also great in another way is this giant swing. So it's an AoE 1, so it'll hit everyone next to him. It's only 2 dice, but it's got 2 armor penetration, and each hit does 2 damage. So there's a balance there if you want to take a risk of hitting more guys with damages of 2, or targeting all on one guy, but rolling 5 dice for it. Reconstruction, you can build him back up a little bit. You can spend 2 materials on an adjacent ally, so a neighboring ally who has material tokens on him. You can spend 2 to restore 2 HP. I think that's going to be pretty good with him because he's got such a high armor and a high HP value that once he gets down to 4 or 3, you can boost him back up to 5 or 6, and they still got to go through that armor still. And finally, he's got the Dawn of the Dynasty, sorry. And after the Last Samurai is destroyed, deal 2 damage to all enemies in a 2 hex radius. So really, your opponent's going to want to try to defeat him from afar with a range attack. And the negative application of this is that you cannot spend energy from the Legacy Vault until the end of the round. So again, as an opponent, you may want to try and take out the Last Samurai early in the round to limit the Yakuza's access to Legacy Vault's energy. Uncle Chaseo. First off, I think he looks pretty cool. He's got this Tommy gun in one hand. He's got this ripped sleeve and a bit of a sinister grin. And I think the grin might be what people have an issue with, but I've seen some comments that they were hoping for resculpts of some models, and this was the one that came up. And I really don't see the need for it. I love this character. The face may be a bit goofy looking, but I don't know. I like the machine gun. I like how big he looks, and I like that ripped sleeve with the cyber arm. I think he looks great. He's got a 1 engineering and 2 hacking, 1 for each mastery, a movement of 4, no armor, but 6 health. He is the book cooker. So when an energy is spent from the vault, Chaseo gains 1. Energy tokens from Chaseo cannot be transferred to the vault at the end of the round, so he doesn't give up his energy back to the vault. So you want to make sure to spend everything that winds up on him. He's got this solid slap, I assume with his cyber arm, as it is 4 dice and 2 armor penetration. He's got his machine gun, the Tommy, range 9, 4 dice. He's got this ransomware hacking attack, which is a direct hack, and you can apply stun to a target enemy in range 8 unless it loses all energy and materials. So that's going to be a trade-off decision for your opponent to make. What's more important to them? Like if they really feel they need that energy or energy for that round or materials for any point in the future, they may have to just sort of bite the bullet and take the stun. And finally, he's got this Katakuchi ability, which is after an enemy uses a range attack against Chesio, he gains a range attack action against that enemy. If that attack destroys an enemy, add 1 energy token to the Legacy Vault. So he doesn't like to add to the vault himself, but this attack will get it there. I believe Katakuchi means vengeance or revenge, which I guess makes sense for this ability since he's if he gets attacked, he can shoot back, which is a pretty cool ability to have for him. Overall, I think he's pretty good. He's well costed, and I think he fits in well to the Yakuza theme. And finally, at the end of the road, we have Vengeful Nakahara. He is got an engineering of 1, no hacking, and a hacking defense of 2. He's got 1 melee mastery, none for ranged, which is fine because he doesn't have any ranged attacks. The movement of 4, the shields or armor of 1, and the health of 5. So he's got his passive ability here, which attacks against Nakahara, lose all armor penetration. He's only got the 1 armor penetration, but it looks like he'll never be able to have that armor cracked by an opponent's ability. His Mantis Blades have critical strike with 5 dice, so that's pretty great. Every skull that you roll naturally will be unblockable. Also has the 2 armor penetration. He has this ability, which is the Code of Brothers. Choose an ally in a 6 hex radius, and it gains a charge action against an enemy that you are in combat with. If the Legacy Vault is empty, this ability becomes quick. So you can do this for free if you have no energy in the vault. So that might take some specific timing and some planning if you want to get that just right. He's got this Determination passive ability, so when an ally in 6 hex radius uses a charge action, it can spend 1 energy to re-roll the charge dice. The charge dice can be fickle, and if you really feel you need that charge in, and it's 4, 5, or 6 hexes away, this gives you a chance to re-roll the die. And finally, he's got the Blood Rush. When Nakahara successfully charges, he can re-roll any number of dice and attack with +2 melee.
Excuse us, ma'am. We've been tracking some Yakuza members. Did you see them come this way?
Oh yes, officer. They just passed this way. You can catch them if you hurry.
Thank you, ma'am.